Awesome. So we are joined by Nicole Lewis today, and Nicole is many things, but to name a few, property coach, investor, author as well, as you'll see. So we've got 2 books in front of us today, which we'll talk about, No Money Deals and Property Quadrants. So yeah, really excited to have you on, Nicole. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, very exciting. So we're here to pick your brain today. And obviously we look after hundreds of residential landlords here in Auckland, predominantly West Auckland through to the city, lower North Shore as well. And what we want to know today is a bit about your story, a bit about your experience, and some guidance as well. And I understand you've brought some books for us to give away to our clients as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you so much for joining us. And look, I think we should just start right at the beginning. I'd love to know about the first property.
First property.
What was it?
So like many typical Kiwis, my first property was my own home. So, it's always sort of the Kiwi dream of you get your own home, and that was my very first one. I bought that in Te Atatu Peninsula.
Nice.
But way back then. It was called Te Atatu North, and wasn't very prestigious. So, when people are going, where do you live? You just go Te Atatu, and they'd go north or south, and you'd go north. Now it's like the peninsula.
Yeah, the script's changed. I like that. My sister lives in the peninsula.
Yeah, now very prestigious. Exactly.
Amazing,
so
amazing.
Yes.
And what sort of home was it?
Oh, so it was just it was 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, on a full site. Just standard little everyday home. Still there.
Awesome.
And it even had the white picket fence.
Nice.
I remember going to find it though. I mean, it's like I can really relate to first home buyers, right? Because you look at all the ads, they look amazing, and then you rock up to the property, and you're like, oh.
Gosh, deflated.
And I looked at so many. I can always remember sitting there saying to my mum, "I give up."
Yep.
And she goes, "No, come on, just one more." And she's like, "What about this one? It's got an ensuite and blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Oh, it sounds too good to be true." She goes, "Come on, we'll go and have a look." And I said, "All right." And we rock up and I was like, "Oh, that's the one.
That's the
it's
one.
even got the white picket fence
Wow,
and everything."
there we go.
And then boom, we got it. And it was amazing.
Amazing. And so that was pure emotional buy, first off purchase for yourself.
Totally.
So, and when did the investing come in after that
Pretty
first purchase?
soon after, because when I was young, I had the idea of I want to be rich and I want to be in charge. Because, I'm bossy and I like, and champagne taste, right? So, cool.
Can't do it on a beer budget.
Exactly. And so I thought, well, how do you get rich?
Yeah.
So I sort of started to read books and it's an interesting one because it's always very tempting. So I worked in the bank. So banking was my first job. And so you'd think, that will help you with property. No. Because what are bankers? Risk adverse.
Yep.
And they're all about, oh, no, it's all risky, don't do that.
It's like asking an accountant whether or not you should buy a deal.
Yeah,
when
correct.
you're doing a renovation or something like that.
Exactly. Or a lawyer. Some lawyers are like, oh, no, don't do that. So one of the first things I learned is you've got to watch who you speak to. So one of the key things we do is we have what I would call water cooler, or these days maybe it's the coffee machine conversation, where the first thing we do is chat to our colleagues.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we will do is chat to our family or our best friends. And one of the exercises when I wrote the book Property Quadrants is I've got it as very much a workbook. Go learn and do because I want people to take action. I say, okay, list the 10 people that you talk to about property.
Yeah.
So I'd write down mum, dad, blah, 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 blah. Now pull out a highlighter and highlight all of those people that are successful property investors. And for me, that was like, stick the lid back on the highlighter and put it
gone.
None.
Yeah.
And then you realise, well, hang on, why am I trying to get advice from people who know nothing about property? So that's kind of the first thing, is that when you get into investing, so I kind of thought, right, that's how you make money. Do you become rich from property? Absolutely, but it's a long-term game.
Yeah,
it's a marathon, not a sprint, but it really does build secure wealth.
And I'd love to touch on that first and foremost. So the greatest thing I've just heard you say is actually controlling the inputs of what you're listening to, right?
100%.
We're in March 2026. The noise at the moment is insane. The amount of noise in the world is probably the loudest I've ever seen it in the last 6 years in New Zealand, right? And I think so many people, get consumed by that. And we've actually seen a lot of clients who are looking to change their plans because of that current noise. And I think the great Warren Buffett quote is so timely in times like this. When others are fearful, be greedy.
Correct.
When others are greedy, be fearful. In 2020, we saw so many people rush and buy property for the sake of buying property in Auckland, and now we're renting out those homes because they don't want to sell it for that loss, right? So they've got stung by the hype, jumped in, and now rental is actually just a hold strategy to not lose their first house deposit, which is, look, at the end of the day, it's great to have an option, but it's one of those things. They probably took advice from the mum or the uncle who wasn't an investor, never had been, and sadly we see a lot of those people who are now sort of in a survival strategy rather than going forward. So what do you think, with your story there as well? You talk about the property quadrants, but I think the property quadrants is actually far beyond sort of where most of our clients are. Most of our clients are, 75% of them are mum, dad investors, first home purchasers who are now upsizing. That's a real common one we see, which is awesome. People are taking the opportunity in the market now, upsizing to a cheaper buy price and keeping the other one as a rental, turning it into an investment. What would be your advice for that person in that early stage of becoming an investor? Some of them don't even think they're investors. So what do you think is the first things you talked about getting good advice?
They're following the 98% of investors who are doing it wrong. 98% of investors do it wrong. They make the mistakes. I am the queen of mistakes. I've been there, I've done those, I've made all the mistakes. And in 2010, we lost about $10 million. We got stung by the global financial crisis. And I certainly realised, we did an awful lot of things wrong. Because what we tend to do, just to give you a brief outline on what the quadrants are, because this is why I wrote them, is that basically, I really like Robert Kiyosaki. Okay, I quite like him. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I like his cash flow quadrants, and I read a lot of books. And so I remember reading one of his books, and I thought, how does property fit into quadrants? So 2 years later, property quadrants came along. And what it is typical Kiwis, we buy our first home, we're in what I call quadrant 1. It's an emotional purchase. We buy something we love. And then what we tend to do is we, like you say, we save, the years go by, we have a little bit of growth in our property, we save a bit of money, and we think, hey, let's go and get a second property. And we either, as you said, upgrade our family home and keep our old one, or we decide we're going to go and buy a property similar to, but not quite as good as, our family home as an investment. And that's a mistake, because that puts us into what I call quadrant 2, which is the cash poor quadrant, where you've got a property and you've got to pay money every month, either to top your mortgage up or to fix things that go wrong, or to pay the rates and the insurance and all of those sorts of things. And we become accidentally cash poor.
Accidental landlords, as they also are known as.
Correct. And that inhibits us from A, having a really good lifestyle, but B, building a strong portfolio that's actually going to add to our cash flow. Because there's wealth, as in equity, money on paper, and a lot of first-time investors will come to me and go, I want equity. And I go, why? Because what are you going to do with your money on paper? You're either going to sell something so you can realise that cash, or you can borrow against it. Either way, you become cash poor. So what you've got to actually do...
You've got to liquidate in order to receive.
Correct. So what we've got to do when we're looking at getting an investment property, we've got to take our emotional hat off and chuck it aside, and we've got to put on our business hat and get into what I call quadrant 4, being the cash flow quadrant. So we've got to look at the property as a mathematical formula. Does it work? Can I pay my rates, my insurance, my maintenance, my property management fee and my mortgage and still have money left over, even if it's only $1, okay? And if the answer is yes, you buy that property. That is your proper investment property, not keeping your old family home, because it's an emotional decision. And when you buy a property with a single income, it does not work. It's always going to be cash flow negative. So where are you going to top that up from? For most people, that's their wages. So then what happens when the cost of living goes up? What happens when rates go up, when insurance go up, when interest you struggle? You're like, panic, financial stress.
Well, it's one thing as well, I think, really good points there. And I think one thing that's been really interesting in the marketplace, and I'm looking to do this on my first home, which was an emotional investment, but I did it with a friend of mine so that it could make sense, because it wouldn't make sense by myself, is this new law for granny flats, you know? So for me, that's a really good opportunity where, hey, oh, no, that's an emotional buy to buy off him, but I have the space for that. So now I can create, in a good area, I can create 2 incomes, and then that becomes a cash flow positive asset. and I'm very fortunate that I can, refinance in order to do that, right?
Yep.
And I think a lot of people, they don't really think about that plan. But it's funny though, because that plan actually has to start before you purchase it in the first place, right?
Yep.
And I think that's where some of the best advice I've seen is actually, if it's an emotional buy, that's all it can be. But if you are actually, it's not a dream home. Is it got upside? Does it have granny flat potential? Does it have this in the future? So that if you wanted to leave, you can turn it into a true investment. You can turn it into cash flow positive. Banks are also more favourable if you're living in there as well. And look, some people don't want to do it because it's a bit of work, it's a bit of development, it's a bit of risk. But I think particularly in Auckland, that's the game that needs to be played in order to get somewhere. And it does take a bit more of a risk, but I think that's what people are looking for in the Auckland market, to create cash flow. Because it's certainly not given to you in Auckland.
Auckland, look, to be fair, I agree with you in part and I disagree in part, okay?
I'd love it. Let's go in.
First of all, when you're buying your family home and it's emotional, you're allowed to be emotional.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah,
You want to live in a certain area,
Yeah.
you want to come home and relax, you want to have friends, that's fine.
Yeah.
Is it a good idea to get something with an upside? Yes. Can everyone afford that? No. So what I'd say is you get on the ladder, you buy what you can afford.
Yeah.
And then when you're buying an investment property, that's when you're changing your hat, okay? Can you build a granny flat and make it cash flow positive in Auckland? Not really, because you've got obviously a cost of building that. And I tell you what, I also encourage my clients, I like to make things, let's say, challenging. I also encourage my clients to go, when I'm talking about cash flow positive, I'm talking about borrowing 100% cash flow positive. Because let's face it, we've managed to buy our family home. Now we're usually leveraging for our investment property. So we're borrowing 100%. So, and is it achievable? Yes. In Auckland? No.
I'd just love to go into that as well. So, one, for the average investor as well, that phrase right there is quite elusive to reality, right? Financing 100%, but then they go to their mortgage broker and their mortgage broker says, oh, it's an investment. You can only lend 70% on this asset.
Correct.
So, and so when you say 100%, you're talking about investment is lended 70% and that other 30 is on your current property, right?
Correct.
And really important to understand, I think, for our clients and any listeners, that is the phrasing we're talking about. Because some people in the beginning, and myself a few years ago as well, would be the same. Oh, you can loan 100% on that property. But no, it's simply that you're leveraging the deposit on that one and then the 70% on the other for the investment.
And I tell you, while we're on that, I'm going to get a bit complicated. Hopefully people understand that. But one of the key things, I think, is to get a good mortgage broker. So I don't have anything against the banks, but you don't want to go to one bank and then another bank and then another bank and another bank. You always want a good mortgage broker because the banks are cyclical. Yeah. Like at the moment, one bank will go, oh yes, here's the money and a bonus for signing with me, and another bank's going, we don't want any more business. You're not going to know that, but your mortgage broker is. And also the way you structure your lending is really important. So I've got a banking background. One of my best friends still works in banking. We don't talk about it anymore because we argue. Is that I'm always about protecting yourself and securing your future. So if you've got your family home with Bank A, you want to have your investment property with Bank B. So what that would mean is you'd go and borrow 70% with Bank B and you'd borrow 30% against your family home here with Bank A, and then not cross-collateralised, okay? Because if you go to Bank A, they will cross-collateralise, meaning each house is tied to the other, which means that if you decide at some point you're going to sell one of those houses, you are at the bank's mercy as to whether or not you get any money out of that sale. Because they might decide, no, times are not good at the moment, you can pay debt down. And you might be like, no, I need the cash to do something. If you're with Bank B, all they want is their 70% back. The rest of the money is yours to do as you wish. So, and that's why I say a good broker, because they structure that. Because what does each bank want? Each bank wants all the business with them.
Always.
Until they don't. Once you've got a few million, they're like, oh, we know, bit of risk. Because what a bank's about.
Or even as well, your financial position changes,
Yes.
I think what you've raised there are some great points. Number one, get a good broker. If you don't have one, you need one.
Yes.
I laugh. A friend of mine was trying to buy his first home, got denied by 3 main banks. And then one day there was a news change in the media, and they had slightly different opinions around how much profit they could make now. And then he got a phone call the next day, 2 banks have now approved you for that. And there was no difference in application, no difference in circumstance. It was just around how much they were willing to take on risk to make money at the time. And another one I just heard from you as well. So mortgage broker, split banking, really crucial. I think a lot of people, and unfortunately sometimes before I've met them, they've gone to their current bank, spoken to the banker, they've got the other place, they've bought another place, and the bank doesn't even tell them that's cross-securitized, or it might be down there on page 24. And I've definitely seen clients when they go to sell a property and then the bank is saying to them, no worries, on settlement day, we'll determine how much of that you'll get back.
Correct.
So there's no even clear pathway for if you sell, say, one asset and the other one's gone down slightly, they won't give you a figure to say, we'll take $80,000 off that sale to pay down this debt. What they'll do is, oh, that's a different team within the banking. This is like the exact phrase I've heard with clients before. And on settlement day, they will determine what happens with your sale proceeds. So you're owning these assets, but like Nicole has said, you actually aren't in control of them. And I don't know about you, but you don't buy an asset to give the control away to somebody else. You know?
Correct.
It's like giving your bank passcode to somebody walking down the street. You wouldn't really do it, right? So it's a great principle to live by. What are some other key principles you think about for that investing? So you've got mortgage broker, split banking, getting good advice around that. What about the accounting side of things? Or is it more about really optimizing your own plan around quadrants?
No, I think there's 3 key players that you really need. One is, of course, a good broker, the other is a good accountant, and the third is a good lawyer. Because like every profession, there's good and not so good. Like accountants, you really specifically want a property accountant who can maximise what you can actually claim back and, you know, obviously minimise your tax bill. I mean, the interesting thing about tax, not that I'm an expert, is that when you are employed and you're on PAYE, which the banks love, but it's the highest form of tax you can possibly pay because nothing is deductible. Okay, whereas when you do property, like in quadrant 3, for example, which is all about making money from property, so this is trading, flipping, developing, all those sorts of things, people go, oh, but you have to pay tax on it. You know, you have to pay tax on your salary too. But you can claim so much. I claim my car, my fuel, my phone, my quarter of my mortgage, all of those sorts of things. So actually your tax that you pay at the end is far less than what you pay on your PAYE. So a really good accountant is quite crucial to minimise your tax bills and maximise what you can deduct and understand property. And the same thing about a lawyer.
I think we'll just go into the accounting side because I think there's a lot of value there for people. So I think what you've hit the nail on the head is so true. Banks love the salary and then people think, oh, I'm loved because salary, that's the best thing for this outcome, right? But it's so important to understand that if you're changing the style in which you are doing business, you're not just buying and holding for yourself as an employee salary. It could be you're a builder and you're doing a development, you're doing a relocation, you're going in with somebody who wants to develop but doesn't have the building team or whatever that looks like. You're entering a different world and you get different benefits and pros and cons. And I think the best thing about that is actually understanding and having an intention. One thing we haven't touched on is actually having strategy. And we will. It's very important. Very important. I think when you told me about the quadrants on the phone when we first spoke, it immediately made me think, oh, I'm in this quadrant. That's why I'm thinking about that quadrant in the future because I've gone really far that way. And now I need to go really far that way in order to sort of create some security around what I'm doing overall. I think it's really important for people to be challenged as well that you might speak to people about property and they don't even know about the quadrants or they've only ever lived in one little corner of it as well. Correct. Which is one thing I think we see a lot of clients of when they get into it. They're talking to everybody's advice around them, the 10, 15 people nearby, and you're not considering that actually they've done property investing, but it's a massive ocean and they've maybe only done a little part of it there. No, you're 100% because when you go to buy your property, you need to know which quadrant you're in before you start. Okay, because if you're in your family home, yes, you can be emotional. If you're looking for a buy and hold, no, it's a whole different set of criteria. You know, there's 4 criteria to it. And it took me 3 years to get it trademarked, which is insane. And you need to, and it's all around the numbers. It's not about location. I know people go location, 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 but when I am searching for a cash flow positive property for a client, and if I'm looking on Trade Me, for example, or One Roof or wherever I'm looking, whole of New Zealand is what I'm searching, but I've got very specific keywords
because I'm looking for the deal. And then I put it into my spreadsheet, and my spreadsheet will spit out at the bottom, hopefully a nice green at the bottom, which means, yes, go, it's cash flow positive.
Yeah.
Or it'll give me red, as in like, oh, it's negative, and it'll tell me by how much, etc., and you can fiddle with those numbers.
Yeah.
That is what you're looking for. And then people go, oh, but hang on, wait a minute, it's on a main road. Yep. And do we look out your window? Do people live on main roads? Absolutely. So, you don't put your own emotion or your own likes and dislikes. You let the numbers do the talking. And same when you're in quadrant 3, like if you're looking for a project, so the basic project would be a property flip. The amount of times I've been out with agents and they'll go, oh, and if you can't sell it, you just put some tenants on it and you hang on to it. It's like, nah, wrong quadrant. If I want the property to hold in my portfolio, it is not this one.
And on that as well, I think, because we deal with a few property flippers and do appraisals for them for selling the property. And it's one of those things as well, often the way that you financed it to flip it doesn't translate over to a main bank quite often anyway.
Correct.
You might not have enough equity, you might not have enough cash down, and the numbers, because you've been with second tier lenders, etc., are pretty atrocious when you look at renting actually. We find once you're committed to that quadrant, as you would say, you want to maximise and stay in it and get the outcome out of that quadrant, because changing is very costly.
Yeah. So actually, just touching on that, because it's a really good point, because when I first started investing, I had no clue that there was a project lender or an equity lender. Like I'd heard of second tier lenders, but I just thought that was if the bank can't approve you, you go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But what I didn't know is that when you do a project, you go to either an equity lender or a project lender and basically go, hey, my name's Nicole, I want to buy this property, it's $1 million, can I have 700 grand? And they go, yeah, sure, here it is.
Yeah.
It's like, sweet. So you don't have to worry about you're filling out your application and your income and a bit of DNA. And yes, it's more expensive, so you'll get charged an upfront fee and the interest rate is slightly higher.
Yep.
But it doesn't matter because you only usually need the money for about 3 to 4 months because it's a quick process. Mainstream banks don't want to know anyway. So, and so that's I think a really cool little learning because I didn't know that. If I'd known that sooner, I could have got into that sooner.
But I think also the caution is that don't assume you can flip a house with a main bank on 4.67% or whatever it is at the moment, because those lenders are short-term, they're higher rates. But that's also where the risk comes in terms of if you held it for 12 months, the interest turns into 100,000.
You lose money.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. And I think, so just to explain that a little bit, there'll be maybe 1 to 1.5% on setting up the finance. You'll pay a higher percent on the finance overall, and the best, some of them as well, you can actually pay all of the interest at the end. But you also normally pay a premium of 0.5% to another percent for that freedom in there as well. So I think the main thing to understand, and one thing I, as an observer within the industry as well as being in it, is that if you can't figure out how something makes sense, you probably aren't educated on something to understand how it works, right? And I still have that to this day. I'm catching up with another investor in a few weeks. I don't understand what he does, and I look at it like that seems like woo-woo, like he somehow conjures some numbers and money out the wind and he moves on to the next, right? But it's just something I'm not educated on.
Well, we don't know what we don't know.
100%,
and the thing is too, like I just, on the way here, stopped one of my clients is doing the very first flip. She said to me, come and have a look at it. I go and have a look and I go, it cost you this amount of money.
Yeah.
She goes, how do you figure that? And now I go through the detail because I'm educating her.
Yeah.
And how do I know this stuff? It's experience. So I see things, she got someone in to quote yesterday, I wasn't there, and I see things they miss because I've done so many of them.
Yeah.
So it's just experience. So that's, but that said, I go and turn on a computer and something doesn't work, I've got no idea.
Yeah.
The ring IT.
You got your specialty.
So you don't know what you don't know. So when you do want to do something and you do it well, you consult an expert.
Yeah.
So,
awesome.
yeah.
And so for you and your journey, obviously, many people would regard you as an expert these days with where you are at in your journey. What did that look like early on, or was it just fail forward?
Exactly what. I mean, look, it's interesting, because it's a good question because people look at it and they go, oh, it's all very well for her, she knows what she's doing.
Because you're down the road.
Exactly. Yeah. And the thing is, when I was younger and I was always about, how do these rich people get all their money? And so I'd go and I'd talk to people, especially in property because that's what I'm interested in. Oh, my dad was a developer, or I inherited this, or My parents helped me out with this. I remember sitting with a guy having coffee, and he had his nephew with him, and his nephew was 20. He's, I've just done my first development and made $1 million. And I was like, fantastic at 20. How'd you do that? Oh, Dad gave me $1 million to start, but I paid it back. And I thought, well, that's very nice. Yeah. But what if, like in my case, Mum and Dad didn't have any money.
It didn't give you anything.
Didn't give me anything. And that's why, hence, I wrote book 2, No Money Deals, because that's where I came from. So my parents, without going into too much of the story, it's in the book. My mother died when I was 14 months old, okay? She died in a car crash. And we lived in South Africa. So I am New Zealand, I'm a Kiwi, but I don't know how I was a few months, lived in South Africa. Gotcha. Dad had no family. So he said I ended up back in New Zealand living with my grandparents, right? So rich dad, poor dad, very much the poor dad mindset. So I lived with my grandparents, and they were very much the poor dad mindset. In fact, my grandmother was the one who told me to get the job in the bank. Oh, very prestigious maybe in the 1930s, you know, but no. And all risk adverse, you know, buy your family home, pay it all off. Yeah. When you get to 65, then start living life. And I was like, oh my God, I want everything now, you know. Champagne tastes rich, bossy, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I sort of think, well, how do I start? Because I haven't got any money.
Yeah.
I haven't got any family money. I also don't have any knowledge. So not like I've got a developer parent to teach me what to do. So very much it was trial and error, and I had to start off with no money deals because, okay, you want to buy your first home, you need a 20% deposit, so let's just say that's $200,000. I mean, maybe you're not spending $1 million, but maths is not my forte. So you can even do property when maths is not your forte. And so how do you save that?
Yeah.
Well, I can work for how many years? So the average person age of first home buyers drawing money out of Kiwi save is 35.
Yep.
So that's a long time to
17 years of working.
Save. Yep. Then unfortunately you draw your money out of Kiwi save. Yeah, cool. If it hasn't gone down like the poor people at the moment that have got the timing right, then you miss out on all of the compounding interest when it's just getting to that critical mass. So let's not go there. So what did I teach my son on how to get into property? He's 21. So when Jacob...
You gave him $1 million.
I gave my son no money, nothing. People think a miserable mother, didn't give him anything. So
he would have been quite vexed by that, eh? So you're the property lady.
Because he's learnt what to do, right?
Yeah.
So he finished university, even made him take a student loan, right? Yeah. Why? Because it's interest free.
Yeah, cheap money.
Okay, so he took the student loan, paid for his course, and he took the living allowance or whatever allowance it is, put it into his managed funds, assets, to let that grow, free money, and also then compounding. Fast forward, he finishes university, he's got a $35,000 student loan, still not charging any interest, and $75,000 in his managed funds.
Yeah.
So, sweet, that's still compounding. He's got Kiwi Saver as well, but we don't touch that. Let that go till he's 65. Okay, he can now let his things compound. So then I said, right, now you've got to buy your first home. He gets a job, works with me. I put him on PAYE, back like that, tick, 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 tick. Could I borrow money? No. Could he? Yeah. So he gets his pre-approval, off he goes, finds his first home.
Yeah.
So he only had a very small approval. He could only get up to like $500,000. Didn't quite have $150,000 deposit. So I said to him, okay, you've got to think outside the box. So we go and we buy something either undervalued, so there's instant equity in it, so he can refinance his equity out. So yes, I'd have to give him money short term. You've got a 4-month stand down with the bank. You go and get your registered valuation. You've bought it under market. So he looked at one that was 30% under market.
Yeah.
So yes, I had to put his deposit in. You buy it. 4 months later, he goes and gets a valuation and refinances it out, because we knew he could refinance it out because that was the level he was approved to. And all the other way that we've done it before is you buy 2 properties on 2 separate titles, and then you sell one off to pay the deposit to keep the other one.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
we'll go into the first strategy first before you sort of people's minds go a bit too far away. So what you were talking about there was really smart if we break it down into the uni, right? So he's getting no interest money.
Correct.
He's then investing that money knowing it's basically free money in some ways. Affects a bit of serviceability later, I can imagine, having a student loan. But
didn't.
Interesting. Interesting. So then you've invested that. He's obviously been putting more money into that during university to build up a deposit. And then it's come time to buy a place, but what you were looking at in the market, you knew what you were buying, the bank would lend 30% more on top of that because of what value it should be when you did a renovation?
So no, so the bank, so in this particular case, the property was valued at 650.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so his pre-approval, he could borrow 450. That's what he was approved to borrow 450. So, so what we knew is that he could buy something. So at 650, the bank assumed he's got his $180,000 deposit to put in, and he can borrow his 450. So what I said to him is, okay, you need to go and find something that's worth 450 but values to 650. So he found one. We actually got it for 404. I think it valued to 600, so we were slightly out. So he could then technically he can only borrow 70%. We were doing this as an investment property. He could have lied to the bank and said he was going to live there. Then he was getting 80%, but we didn't lie. We said it was an investment. So he can borrow 70%. So I've got to put in 120,000, being the price being 400. So therefore he borrows 280. You got to wait 4 months, go get the registered valuation, which we already knew was 600. Go back to the bank with the 600. Now he can borrow 400. So he tops that out, gives me my money back.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And how much did he have to pay a fee?
No, I didn't make him. Now, let's say I didn't have any money, or let's say you've got mum and dad with no money, like was in my case. What can you actually do? Well, you could still go to a second tier lender who will lend you 70% of the valuation of the property. If you did a little bit of reno to it. So I've done this before where I'll say, okay, I'll renovate it before settlement. And this particular property didn't need any renovation. Hey, but I don't care. I'll go give it a coat of paint.
Yeah.
And then you get it revalued after renovation, and then they'll lend on that.
And then you use that to pay off.
And then you use that to buy your property if you don't have someone to put the money in for you in the first place.
And I think on that as well, it's really important to understand as well that when you're looking at property, like I remember for me buying my first home, I looked at what I could buy myself, and I think it was a unit in Henderson. And I looked at it and I just went, man, that's not gonna go long term. And then a friend of mine, he was real big on shares and investing, and we joined together to buy an asset in a better area, but it needed a massive do-up.
Yep.
So it was kind of the bottom market for a better area. And that was great because it helped me understand that shared capital, like we could leverage that together.
Correct.
And then that created value for us in order to keep going through that process of building wealth. And enjoying our first home as well, because it was emotional as well for us. It was fun, two young lads rip the carpet out, started smashing things, and almost fell through the deck as well because it was rotten. And we had to prop it up because it had a bow of about 3-4 inches when you stood on it. So, and I think it was really important though, because it started for me to realise what you're talking about with the second tier lender is you don't need all elements of the process yourself. You can find second-tier lenders, people networking with others, or even just going out there for private money as well. Like these days, there's Facebook groups where you can do that.
Correct.
If you've got a Facebook group, you've got a lawyer, you get a contract in place. There's a way to do it, and it all comes down to being educated and figuring it out. Yeah.
And the key is the right people. Like you don't have to be in quadrant 1 for your first house. No. So Jacob, my son, he was firmly in quadrant 4. Yeah. Because he worked with me for a year.
And
he knew what to look for. Investment property. So it was all cash flow positive.
Yep.
So after he paid his mortgages, rates, his insurance, his property management, and his maintenance, he had money left over.
Gotcha.
And so that's what you want. Young 21-year-old.
Don't want to give up your lifestyle.
Correct. And then you have an asset that's going to grow. So so you can do it at any stage. Now I didn't know this when I was young. I had no idea. So I just made mistakes. So I went and bought the wrong rental properties, like just a single standalone house that cost me money to top up. And then you end up broke and and these days it's even tougher. You've got healthy homes. So the tenant rings, says we've got a leak. You can't just go, here's a bucket. You've actually got to fix it. And what if you haven't got the money? Yeah. So, it's a case of you look for ways that keep you secure. Yeah. You take, am I a risk taker? I don't think so. Because I'm actually quite conservative. So I always want to look about, to me, family's number one. Yeah. How am I making the future secure for my family? So if you're buying a property that is cash flow positive, then that certainly helps you. You've got security.
It's funny because I'm almost the opposite, right? But I obviously don't. I don't have a family or anything like that. I'm obviously, and I always say to clients when they ask for my own advice, I say my risk appetite is very different to yours, And for me, because I know what I want my family life to look like in the future, that's why I'm so big on taking risk. Because I know I'm not going to build it without, going for it and taking on some risk, especially when it comes down to timeframes and things as well. And I'm a bit of a freak like that. I do a bit of planning around like what I want that to look like in 5 years or 10 years. What would it take? What does that look like? And I think it's one thing. I think education is one thing, but strategy is another. And I think for me, like I know my strategy and why it works for me and why I want to go about it that way. I'd love to know from you, from those first few property deals, how did you build out these property quadrants and how do they coexist for you? So you've obviously got, maybe if you can just highlight for everybody what the 4 quadrants are, and then what does that look like through the stages of your journey? So if we take you from your first property, the mistakes here and there, how did you evolve to be an educated investor with a portfolio, if we can call it that, on a smaller scale? And what were some of the lessons there?
That's a really good question. So first of all, I'm big on strategy. So you touched on your 10-year plan. In the Property Quadrants book, we talk about what's your 10-year plan.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people don't even have one. They've got no idea.
They don't even have a 2026 plan.
No,
sometimes.
Exactly. But your 10-year plan's always a moving target, because if you measure your success backwards and you say, okay, now it's 2026, what was I like in 2016? You've probably achieved way more than what you actually thought you could back there. So, excuse me, so you set yourself a 10-year goal, but be aware you're going to grow and you're going to develop and you're going to learn, and that 10-year goal is going to be you're going to reach it like that, and you're going to, surpass it.
Well, also the education is the leverage to achieving things quicker, right? Like once you understand how to do something, it no longer becomes this mysterious 4-year thing. It could It could be, I can get that money from a second-tier lender and do it today.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I actually know that somebody in my family, we talk about the developers, maybe not the developers with $1 million, but hey, somebody with my family, they have that equity. They want to do something with it to help me. But, actually, let's not give pre-inheritances with cash. Let's do something together as a family for property as well. So I think that's a massive thing. I like what you're saying. It's a 10-year plan, but you're not actually inscribing the date in stone. Because there is a law that they say the work will expand to fit the time.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, what I do is I peg it back. So it's like, right, so start with a bit of a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
Now peg that back to 5 years. So what I do with my mentoring clients, we have a strategy session. And I say, right, 10 years looks like this. Cool. Now I say, now out of that 10 years, what do you want to achieve in 5 years? They go, this. Okay, now cool. Now 12 months. What are we doing at 12 months? Are we doing this and this? Okay, great. So this is our 12-month plan. What are we doing tomorrow? And we start off like that, and we're having a look at so say your plan is, I want to have a quadrant 4 cash flow positive investment property at the end of 12 months. So I say, fantastic. What do we need to do tomorrow? We need to know what's your borrowing power. So you need to go and see your mortgage broker. And in my case, even if they go, nothing, you can't borrow anything. Fabulous. What have we got to do in order to be able to borrow what I want? You've got to achieve this.
It's not a no, it's just an adaptation to step.
Correct. And what a lot of them do as well is, if we're looking for these multi-income properties, like I got one for a client, he paid, I think it was $695, brings in $1,300 a week. So you take $1,300 a week to your mortgage broker for rent. Now suddenly you can borrow a whole lot more, because they're doing their calculation thinking you'll get $600 a week.
Yeah. And so to go into that actually as well, really important to go through kind of the 3 aspects, right? So when you're looking at the lending side of things, what you just talked about is a broker saying no to you based on your income, your current income streams from property or your rental property. But then if you find them another property that's actually cash flow positive by $300-400 a week, or you're showing them that, hey, this one, I've got a home and income actually, and my mother's been living in there, but here's a rental appraisal for $550. Your situation changes because your serviceability's gone up.
Correct.
And then you've got the equity element, which can be in the property, in cash. So important, the most basic one is probably that if your house is worth $1 million and you only have $500,000 of lending, that's equity in your property. You don't need physical cash in a bank account and a savings account. That's money to a bank. I think that we probably should have started with that.
But you need a plan.
You need a plan.
Because if you're going to leverage that property up, now it's cash flow negative and you've got a big mortgage. Yep. So I'm always thinking, well, what's your plan to have the same amount of money in cash as you have in debt? And then you can, within 10 years, and then you've got the choice as to whether you want to pay down your portfolio and have it all mortgage free, or invest your money elsewhere. And as I said, by then you would have grown in your education, so you have a bit more ideas. So this is how I see the quadrants sort of working together. like I sort of think, okay, quadrant 3 is the cash rich quadrant. So if I need $100,000 because I want to go and buy another property or I want to do a trip, how do you make that? And when I do my speaking, I say to people, how do you save $100,000 in a year? Most people laugh because, you can't. But actually not when you are working your job and paying all your expenses in, your high cash, your high tax and putting a little bit aside. So, we talked earlier and you were saying that you flipped cars. You've got another business on the side to make money. Well, I flip property. This is where quadrant 3 comes into it. How can you use property to make money? So I didn't have any money. Remember that? I didn't have any rich parents. In fact, I only had my grandmother going, oh, don't do that. That's all, scary risk. And where did I work? At the bank. Oh, no, don't take any risk. So I sort of thought, oh my goodness, what do I do? Hence reading books and finding top investors that have got huge portfolios. So who are the people you want to aspire to be like? And then let's take advice from those people. And then the key thing is when you ask them for the advice, do it. I have so many people ask me and I say, do this, and they do the opposite. And I'm like, what are you flipping asking?
That's a very common one for sure. And I think there's a lot of good property coaches and investors to learn from in New Zealand.
Right.
I think also there's so much free knowledge, like online, even your website has got really good information there. Facebook, Instagram, I follow all of them, and there's always knowledge being put out and so much information going out. And I think that's probably the biggest opportunity that I have is that you can get so much information for free. I know there's some coaches as well, a couple $100 a year, you can get access to their full education platforms and all those sorts of things as well. So I think the education is there, the action is the hardest thing though, for sure. And I think, fortune favours the bold, as they say. And that's not necessarily like you were talking about. You're not a risk taker, but I would say you are bold because you're going out there to say, which quadrant do I need? I need that one. I'm going to go after it, right? And that's a form of boldness. So I think that's really crucial as well. And so where, you're talking about that developing education in terms of the journey and understanding which quadrant you want. What are some of the key, if I, let's take myself, right? Let's say I've got 1 or 2 investment properties. I understand that maybe, okay, I've got one that it's a capital or a development play, okay? And I realize, I don't have cash flow, or maybe I don't know what property trading is. What do you think that advice is to go from one or 2 properties to 3 or 4? Is it exploring other quadrants? Is it, increasing income to keep growing the current quadrant and then go all into the other one? What do you think, what are the factors that help people sort of make that strategy journey for themselves?
Good question. Whether you've got property number 2 that you're trying to buy or property number 102 that you've got to buy, what you'll find is that people have got those big portfolios. The strategy is always the same. It's a combination of quadrant 3 and 4 to start with. So where am I going to go and get my $100,000 from? I'm going to go and do a deal in quadrant 3. And you might go, but I don't know anything about quadrant 3. So quadrant 3, you need 3 things. You need all 3, but not from you. You can have none. Time, knowledge, and money. Okay, so if you've got no time, no knowledge, and no money, you partner with someone who has those things. Okay, so you always can think about partnering with people. It's always solution focused. What do you need? So the basic level in quadrant 3 is property finding. So so you might say, I haven't got any money. So you can just go and find a property for somebody else, and you might make $5,000 to $10,000 on the side. Well, if you found one of those in a month, and one of my clients just made $5,000 from passing a deal on to someone, she didn't want it. She goes, I make $5,000 by passing it to that person.
And so just to explain that as well, because I remember hearing about this for the first time, and then you think it's a foreign concept, right?
Correct.
It's a bit like the crystal ball, everyone's got one, supposedly, but we can't see it, we don't know where it is. And I think that's really important. That's essentially where you take a property contract, you get it under contract, you create a deal that is valuable to somebody, right? So you are getting educated in order to do that, and you're taking it to somebody who maybe, hey, this is a great flip because I've managed to negotiate buying it for this amount, and then you can nominate them to the contract, right? And then you can obviously exchange a fee for that. That's what that actually is in maybe layman's language, or to somebody who's never heard of that. And it can absolutely be done, and there's no limit to actually what you could charge for on selling that, right?
Oh, look, I say charge as much as you possibly can.
Well, even an investor who a good friend of mine who I've been met over the years and sort of built a friendship with is when he gets a deal that's so good for him, there's somebody out there who would be happy to pay $100,000 more for it because he's managed to negotiate the price. He knows what it needs for renovation. He's got the team that can do the work, and then put that all together. He could give it to somebody else, and the yield might go from 10% to 8.5%. But that person will pay $100,000 more in that circumstance to make it there. So really empowering to know you don't actually need all the pieces to the puzzle.
Correct.
You do not. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is you do not need to be sitting on $200,000 to do something in property.
Yep.
The number one thing you can probably do is get educated, get in that position. And knowing what I know now, I wish I did that. I didn't. Like you say, I had an obsession with forward drives, and I would buy them under market, get them up, tidy them up, do them, get them to road legal, and then sell them. And that was my building and my base to do what I want to do. So there's a lot of ways to do it, and I think that's a great way to start. What's some of the next steps?
So we really want to get the quadrants to work together. Okay, so we want to try and help you get your properties faster. So we need to be able to go, like you can make $100,000 in property relatively easy because it's a high ticket item when you know how. So first thing you want to do is, join a group. The property investor associations around the country is really good. The Property Investor magazine is a great thing to buy. Get a book, read that. And also, like when I write my books, for example, it does tell you how to do everything. It really annoys me when I read a book and I'm like, this is amazing. And then it's like, well, how do I do that? But they don't tell you. So that's the thing. A lot of these gurus go, I went from here to here. And it's like, you can do it too. And you're like,
how?
Well, how?
Yeah.
What's the next step? So I do lay everything out for that. And also, even if you've got absolutely no money. And really the key is people. So it is getting to know the right people. So, and most people are accessible in the property industry. Like you go to a Auckland Property Investor Associating meeting, for example, they have it on, I think it's the second Tuesday night of every month. The people are amazing. They really want to help you. They'll tell their story. They're not, arrogant, such and such as. They're great. So that's a good place to start.
And you've got to be open to it as well.
Yeah, you've got to go. Now, I hate networking. People go, it's easy for you. You love networking. I hate networking.
Really?
If I go to a group and I don't know anyone, I'm like, what should I do?
It's funny, controversial opinion. I've done networking groups and I've met some amazing people through them. But I actually personally, I despise the fact that you're set up and put in there. Yeah. Like I'm a social person and I'm a people person. My networking these days is just finding people I like and spending more time with them and connecting with them, much like yourself. And I think it's interesting. I think you've got to get out of yourself. You've got to get in those rooms and just be open to meeting people you like and looking for the people you like, because you learn from and you do business with people you like ultimately as well. I think one thing with that that's really crucial on that point with the networking side and finding people for that is that people have the knowledge, and often I find so many people love to give that knowledge.
That's right.
Just this morning I was at a property, a water care worker was giving me all this wisdom about property when I told him what I did, right? He was giving me his experience, and a lot of people want to give that knowledge on. So I think social media is great these days. You can connect with so many people like that and get in rooms.
Got to watch social media though.
Yeah.
I follow some of these websites.
You've got to follow the how-to. Yeah, the people who show the how.
Yeah. Some of them, I look at some of these social media groups and some of the advice is terrible. Oh my goodness, no, don't do that. So it is hard because you think, oh, cool, these groups are good.
I think train your judgment though, right? Get in there, look at all of it, and then really figure out, like, do I agree with that? At the end of the day, if you want your future wealth and you're in property investment journey, you've really got to be able to think for yourself and build for yourself. Like, I know my strategy would be very different to yours, right? But I know that for me, my stage of life, I know why I want to go ahead with that strategy. And mine is really, it's evolved. It's only really happened in the last year or so. It's like, buy a property, add value, do it up, redevelop it in some way, relocatables, granny flats, repurposing, redeveloping a building that's already there, maybe converting it into a home. Now, I do that because it's actually emotional and capital. But for me, that's what I'm happy to do because I love doing that. And then I know that those are very risk-averse, very risk-taking sort of deals. And then once I've done those, I'm putting that same level of risk or energy into cash flow so that I can push harder in that way. So, but you've got to think about those personal circumstances. I think that's really crucial. Exciting to hear about that stage of your journey. Property investors associations are really great to connect with people. What do you think is like if let's maybe step away from the majority of people who are our clients, right? The mum and dad investors with 1 or 2. Let's say if I was a client with sort of 3 or 4 properties and I was wanting to get the property lifestyle, as your company is quite adequately put, right? What do you think that looks like in terms of that strategy and those goals? And what do you have to learn in order to build that pathway?
Okay. That's a good question. I want to also address risk, because we talk about risk a lot, and risk is a big thing in property, right? And I say, I'm risk adverse, and people go, how do you do that? Like, have I spent millions of dollars on property and not been approved for a mortgage? Yep. Yeah. I won one at an auction, and it was like, I think I paid 1.7 million. I was like, wow, what a freaking bargain. I walked out of the auction, the bank rang and said, oh no, we've declined you. I was like, well, that's a bugger. So I remember saying to my husband, I've just got this bargain, but hang on, I've got to get the finance. Now I knew I could go second tier lending. Yeah. So we went second tier, got the finance, settled. I spent $7,000 putting down some new carpet and a cupboard door, got it revalued for $1.2 million more than I had paid for it, and refinanced it to a mainstream bank. So I knew I could do that. So people might go, oh, that's risky, but I didn't think it was.
Well, I think I love that you raised that, right? Because to our average person listening to this, that's a massive risk, right?
Yeah.
Massive risk. But the thing is when you're educated, and you understand 100%. Your numbers, and you can call the person, walk into the auction, hey, this is this property, can you jump on and tell me the bank IVAL or whatever it is?
Yeah.
Can you, I'm with ANZ, what's the IVAL, which is obviously their electronic valuation number. Walk in and you can get those parameters in place to know, it is a risk to somebody on the outside, but to me, I'm educated enough to take that risk, right?
And you've hit the nail on the head, because risk is only lack of education. So, I say I'm risk adverse. I'm looking at a development I'll go unconditional on in a week or so. And so what I do is I go, well, hang on, wait a minute, let me double check my numbers with with someone else who also does those same types of developments. So I'll sort of go, hey, well, have I missed anything here? They're like, no, you haven't. It's like, cool. So again, it's knowing the right people, and it's working up to things gradually. Like I sort of look at it thinking, one of my strengths is confidence, and one of my weaknesses is overconfidence.
You hear pessimism, not like pessimism.
Yeah, correct. I get too overconfident in things. Like I spent too many million last year, and I lost $300,000 on a deal. It's like, I have not lost money since 2008.
Wow.
And I was like, the first one made me $750,000. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. Next one lost me. So then I thought, okay, well, that happened. I have to make the money up before the end of the financial year, which I've done.
Yeah.
Made the money back, so no big deal. But I look at it and go, so when you make a mistake, it's just an opportunity to learn. So you either have wins in life or you have lessons. Okay. So I thought, well, what did I do wrong with this? And that's when I sort of analysed it all and realised I was a little bit too blasé in it. I didn't actually look at the 2 possible downsides closely enough. So therefore, it didn't go very well.
And I think that's really powerful, right? Is that when what I've actually just heard is that the difference from going from a little bit of investing to absolutely going for it, and having a large portfolio and incomes from all these quadrants and streams, is that you've taken all of the lessons. You've been an optimist, but you're always learning, and you're actually trying to get an opinion for the benefit of the doubt as well. I have the same issue. I actually cannot. I always joke, I can't think about pessimism until I've committed to something, and then my doubts, fears, and worries come up. Whereas I think a lot of people are the other way. But I think that's really powerful from you, is that risk is only risk if you're not educated. Correct. So if you're dealing with worries, fears, anxieties around property, you need to get educated on those things. And like, for example, we do free rental appraisals. We do free strategy sessions with people, even if they're not looking to buy. I mean, I had a client call me this morning. He's a young kid, bought a house to do up. I did a rental appraisal when he was purchasing it, and we went through and did a bit of a strategy around, hey, if you rented it, this is what you would need. He's probably 6 months to a year away from doing that. But, I've given him my time because I can see, I love this young guy. He's getting after it. I'll give him some advice. I'll point him in the direction for a valuation for chattels in the future he was asking about. And I actually told him, don't do one now. There's no point. You just got a flat mate. You're not going to get a lot of tax benefit. But here's an accountant to talk to, because I'm not I don't know tax. I just know my experience. So you talk to this guy and double check what I've said. There's so many opportunities like that for people, and I love what you said. If you think it's risk, you just need education,
Correct.
right? That's the key philosophy. I love that. I'm going to remember that one.
And I mean, the other thing you talked about is how we look at things. So in this book, in No Money Deal, I talk about looking things through lens, like an up lens or a down lens, as I call it. And I also talk about parking your emotions in property, which is easier said than done because property is emotional even when it isn't. So if I'm looking in quadrant 3 and I'm like, yes, I've got this property under contract, it's all awesome. And then...
So quadrant 3 is a flip.
A flip, yeah. So I bought 2 rural subdivisions in the last couple of months, right? So I bought one rural subdivision. I went unconditional. The agent rang me and said, hey, someone wants to buy it off you. And I was like, oh, bugger. Because I really wanted to do it. And I went, oh, but, it's money, bring me something on paper. So they offered me $400,000 more than I paid for it, right? Now, most people go, yes. And I was like, ugh. So I ring, like, Roy, my sort of mentor who I check, what do you think of this? He goes, take the money. And I'm like, oh, but it's only $400,000 and I want to do the deal,
Yeah.
And then it's like, hang on, wait a minute. I always say, listen to those who know better than you.
Yeah.
So I took the deal. And then it's like now I found another one. So that's sort of super cool.
So take the opportunities when they're given to you. And also another lesson I've just heard there is even the mentor has a mentor.
Correct. Absolutely.
And I think the biggest thing as well is like sometimes it's funny, I've been very fortunate. One of the business owners here is very much a mentor to me, not just on financial, but in terms of life as well, and philosophy of life, I think, is really crucial as well. But with that is... I soon found out he's got a mentor, and his mentor's mentor's got a mentor. And I think humility to be a lifelong learner is a really crucial part of it as well. And I think it's quite, I'm sure people listening to this, they'd think, this lady's talking about making $500,000 and she's not happy with it being handed over.
And that's the other thing, talking about the up lens and the down lens. You're 100% right. Yeah. And I put it in here because everything we do in life, we're either looking at it negatively or we're looking at it positively. And what's our lens? How do we see
Well,
things?
if we translate it, that's 8 years of the average New Zealand salary, right? That you got from finding the opportunity, being educated, knowing what the opportunity is on paper. That is something that most people, like, how long would you say it took you to be able to be educated enough to get those opportunities? To relate it back to the average person, how many years or hours or any way you can quantify
I think
that
the thing
experience?
is, it's interesting, because we sit here and we sort of go, okay, so within 24 hours, I got 400 grand, and I'm going, yeah.
Yeah.
But when I did my very, very, very first flip, I made $2,000, and I was like, yeah,
there you go. There you go.
Grand.
So that's the up lens.
Because it could have been a loss, and so because I've been doing property for a while, we start at this level, but you think, actually, wait, but we're all starting down here. So I didn't know what I was doing back then, I sadly didn't realise I looked at things through a down lens. I was always like, even though I'm a glass half full kind of person. And that's where it's interesting because, like I read a book, it's called The Gap and the Gain. I'd really recommend it. I think it's kind of great. By? It's by Benjamin Hardy and Tom Sullivan. So Tom Sullivan's one of the biggest business coaches in America. I have a business coach as well. She's based in Dubai. She's a C-suite coach. So so I'm big on you grow. You grow and you develop by having the right sorts of coaching. And I'll diverse, if you're looking at coaching, always get someone who guarantees results, by the way. That's a big thing. That's a whole other thing. I've had so many that don't. So they've got to stand behind what they do. It sort of says, so even if something minor happens, like, I don't know, there was an example, you get given a cookie and then someone else wants half, so you break it in half. Now you've only got half a cookie. Is that like, oh, I've only got half? So kids will throw a tantrum over it, but they're in the gap, looking at it through the down lens. What we really should be is, I've got a cookie. Look at that. Look at it through the up lens. We're in the game. And so we do that every single, like probably 20, 30 times a day, and we don't even realise. And so one of the real key things, I mean, I lost 10 million, I don't know, 10, 20 million, I lost count, a lot of millions. Back in 2008, it took me 3 years, 8, 9, 10, it was all like, meh.
Dwindling.
It was stressful, okay? And I actually had to really take my mind, people go, mindset, but it's crucial. I really had to work on my mindset or I would have got nowhere. So I remember hanging out washing. hey, very exciting. And I'd be like, actually, this is really cool. I'm hanging out washing. I've got a family. I had to go back to that basic. What am I grateful for?
Wow.
Because it was such a journey. And then you slowly build yourself up. And when I speak around the country, it's like I picked up horse manure and I sold it at the top of the driveway. And when someone would buy it, I was like, yeah, I've just made $2.
Yeah.
Because it was like, you've got to take the wins.
Yeah.
And then you look at it thinking, okay, well, actually the horse manure business cost me nothing.
Yeah.
The bags are free. The twine comes on the hay. That's free. The horse craps 15 times a day. So it's what we call in property sweat equity. To scrape it up, stick it in there.
Sweat equity. Yeah.
So therefore you think, okay, let's translate that to property. How can I do some property deals with nothing, with no money? So you go and you find a deal, as you said before, you'd sell it to someone else. What do I need? I need to know one person who wants to buy it off me. Where do I find those people? Or they're property investors. You go into those circles.
Yeah.
And I need to know if I'm finding a good property. Well, how do I know that? Well, that's quadrant 3. You go and read about that. I mean, I've got all the numbers, all the figures, all the Gantt charts. And what if you don't know? Well, you go to those same property circles and find the traders. You ask a trader if they'll tell you about the project, you won't be able to shut them up. They'll tell you everything.
People love talking about what they actually do. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think it's really crucial as well. As like you've got to understand that structure in order to think about what do I need to do to get to where I want to be, and who do I need to talk to in order to get that information. And if you're missing a piece of the puzzle, normally there's somebody else you need to talk to, right? I think that's really crucial.
Yep.
I love how you said that, the first one was $2,000, because $400,000 I know to the average person is just unfathomable, right? But I think it started with 2,000 and that would have been amazing. And then you get desensitized, right? Because you get so used to it, it becomes almost like work, finding these deals and creating all these outcomes, right? When you look at these people in terms of that, if we can go into, if you don't mind, so you talk about GFC, 2008 to 2010, you lost 10 million, you wouldn't count, right? What are some of because the hardest times give the biggest lessons, right?
They do.
The first one you've told me is that life isn't all about making money. Sometimes you've got to be grateful for hanging the washing. Which I think is really crucial because your brain can go out here. But if you're grateful for where you are doing something really simple, a great one I heard was from a lady, and she said, I wish I could be grateful for the noise of my children running around my house anymore because they've now left home and she lives alone. And that really hit home. It was like, oh, wow. There was a stage, she was being interviewed and she talked about how she used to complain about it, but now she wishes with every bone in her body she could get it back.
Yeah.
So really, really important stuff there, I think, as well. GFC, that moment of gratitude, what are some other lessons that came out of that? Obviously, there must be 10 million lessons, you'd hope.
There are, but there's probably 4 keys. Number one is gratefulness, because wealth is not about money. Even though people go, well, it's easy for you to say because you've got money. Yes, but I didn't used to. Wealth is about choices. Okay, so it's so that you can actually choose to do what you want to do. So, like the other day, someone said to me, when are you going to retire? I thought, well, I am retired. I can't imagine doing anything else. If I stopped doing property, what would I do? Twiddle my thumbs. So wealth is about choices. Number 2 is always gratitude. So I always sort of say, what are the 10 things that you're grateful for? And what are your key values? So values do change, but for me, number 1, values family. And also number 2 is to be able to give back and help other people. The third thing is mindset, okay, because what is going to stop you from doing anything in property? Willingness. Because if you're in the down lens, you'll come up with excuses. I don't know anyone, I don't know where to start, I haven't got any money, I haven't got any time, I'm too busy. We can all say excuses till the cows come home.
Well, I think the thing you've hit the nail on the head there on as well is if you're not counting your blessings, all you're seeing is the blocks, right? And I think that's really crucial, is that you don't need all the answers, but if you've got a good perspective and you go to the people who maybe do, you read these books, you go speak to those property investors, you can get all of that positive information and knowledge, and that can create your momentum to get into something. But you've got to do that through the 2 lenses. Like 1 is you've got to be in your up lens, you've got to be positive, and 2, you've got to be in your helpful phase. How can I help you?
Okay, I mean, even I say to my mentor, I went and I had coffee with him, and I mean, he's like amazingly super successful. His mentor was Sir Bob Jones, by the way.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what can I do to help you? I actually said to him, okay, so here's an example. I don't like networking, right? And I said to my business coach, she goes, oh, you should ring Roy more. And I'm like, oh, but what am I going to say? I don't want to be a nuisance. I don't want to bother him.
I don't want to waste his time.
Yeah. And she's like, well, just ask him what you can do to help him. I'm like, well, how does he need help? He's up here. But nevertheless, see, I listened to my business coach, and I don't like doing these things. So we went out for lunch, and I'm like, well, I don't want to bother you. What can I do to help you? And he went, nobody says that. They're all about take, take, take. And I'm like, really? So that's your key. You know, you've got to feel the fear and do it anyway. Also, another book I read, and come at it from a helpful lens. How can I help other people? Because it takes time to build relationships. It's not going to be instantaneous. So you need willingness, you need the gratefulness, you need to be able to help other people. Okay, and then the other thing really is it's just that you actually need strategy and you need structure and you need a little bit of discipline, because it does take time. So it's like you're going to go and look for properties. So you've actually got to spend some time looking at properties. And then you want to learn how to do the numbers. Well, I mean, that's easy. I'm useless at numbers, but I know people who are brilliant at numbers. I say, go build me a spreadsheet that does all this stuff. You know, I don't know how to make a spreadsheet. I still got no idea. Do I want to? My husband said, you should do a spreadsheet course. Oh, no, thank you. I'll pay someone to do that for me.
Yeah.
So, you know, what is it that you enjoy, like you talked about, lifestyle? What is it that you want in your lifestyle, and what can you allocate to other people who are experts in what you're not? And this book here, No Money Deals, it's the stories of my mentoring clients and their successes. Two things in here. One, Jesse, he was 22, 23, had $30,000, said, how do I get my first property? So we started in quadrant 3. He went and he bought a property, he did a flip. He only had $30,000. We got him a money partner. The whole deal was in here, exactly numbers and how we did it and everything else. And it sort of turned into about $150,000.
Wow.
Okay. Now, he actually kept that property. In here, I said he sold it because this went to publish before he'd finished. He actually ended up keeping it. He'll sell it at some stage.
Gotcha.
So it's probably gone up by more than that now. So he had no time, $30,000, so limited money, no experience. So how did he do a flip? He came to me, got me to coach him how to do it. So he leveraged my knowledge and how to do it. And then he asked if I'd project manage it for him. And I'm like, oh, I don't do project management. But I thought, oh, why not for clients? So he had no time. He's a rocket scientist. He's off in Marsden Point, what is it? Gisborne launching rockets or whatever. So he leveraged my time. So I just went out there and project managed, leveraged my time, leveraged my knowledge, leveraged our group for the rest of the money, and he put in a small bit that he had. So that's a real great, and the nicest guy. I love Jesse, the nicest guy in the world. He's all about how can I help someone. He's just the most amazing guy. So, that's a really good story in here. So you can do that too. You leverage your time, you leverage your knowledge, you leverage your money. So if you don't have any of them, you just have to meet the people that do.
And be able to help them and understand what do they want to get out of it, right? Yeah.
And the other story in here is Ryan. Ryan is a very well-known investor, and he put together this big deal. The first time I met Ryan, he came to me for mentoring, was when the government had put that non-deductibility in, and he was like, oh, I'm now $40,000 short. What do I do? Because, you're $40,000 short. Just go to your boss. Can I have a $60,000 pay rise so I can pay $20,000 extra in tax, so I can have $40,000 to pay the tax on the money that I don't have?
Yeah.
So it's like, well, we'll go do a property flip. Didn't know how to do it. He'd never done one. Didn't have enough money. So he did a flip, got a money partner, made $150,000.
There you go.
Sweet.
Sorted for 4 years.
$75,000 each because he had a money partner, had to pay some tax, etc. Sorted. But now he had the knowledge to keep going and going. So this story...
So through the pain, he actually unlocks a new skill. Yeah.
Then he ends up in this story going and doing what we call a negative equity deal. So he ended up buying a property that he got paid to buy. So I do explain it in more detail, but it ended up, he got access, he did it up, he got it revalued, and I think the whole project was 1.8 million. He ended up being able to borrow 1.95 million. So he actually made $150,000 to buy a property that makes him $60,000 a year after mortgage, insurance, rate, expenses.
I imagine that's quite a serious multi-unit property.
It is. It's in here. And I tell you the other thing that's interesting is I was writing this book sitting in Tahiti, and I had a $4.5 million deal under contract at the time, and I was like, oh, I haven't got enough money. How am I going to? Oh, I won't even worry about it. Typing Ryan's story, because Ryan's going, oh, I don't know how I'm going to put this deal together. Haven't got enough money, haven't, da-da-da. He ended up using a money partner as well and paying them back. And I thought to myself, let me listen to Ryan, who flipping got that from me, and go ahead with my deal as well. So I did my deal, made $750,000 from it as well. So, there you go. You just you've got to just keep going, and you don't stop when you don't know the answer. You don't, because you don't know what you don't know, and you've just got to think that the doors of opportunity are open. If you know the right people, because you've got the right mindset, and you discipline yourself to do something you don't enjoy, you'll get there.
Well, the biggest thing, I think that's a great point to end on there, and I think it ties in everything you've spoken about, is that you've got to be positive, because often, like I can see a common theme through all the conversations, is that through a negative experience, there's an opportunity to learn, and that education means the negative becomes opportunity. And there's I was just listening to a podcast the other day. Alex Hormozi, very famous businessman. Oh yeah, I've read a few of his books. Yeah, really good, very practical. And somebody asked him what the best business advice he was ever given was. Everything looks like risk at the time and opportunity in reverse.
That's right.
And I think the best overall theme for me is that when you're going through something that you think is a problem, the solution is obviously a skill that you can then have, which you have for life, and who you become in order to upskill and create $400,000, $750,000 opportunities, or translated across to maybe some people listening to this, what you deem wealth and success to be. I think that's the real value when you combine all of it together over time.
100%. So, like I look at my kids, so my daughter's at university in Palmy, and she'll go, oh, something, she's made a mistake, something's happened. And I'll go, what did you learn from it? I learned this. So make as many mistakes as you can. What did you learn from it?
And iterate quickly, learn quickly.
And she wants to be a vet, and she didn't get into vet school in the pre-vet thing. And she goes, oh, Mum, are you disappointed? She only just missed out. She ended up with a B- average, right? She needs a B. She said, are you disappointed in me? I said, are you joking? I said, my daughter, she did not do science at school. So she picked up year 1 university physics, bio and chemistry.
Oof.
Thank you very much. And she ended up with a B-.
Oh, wow.
I said, far out, my darling girl. That's fucking fantastic.
And that's the gratitude.
And people go, what's your plan B? And I said, no, she's going to be a vet. So what she looked into is she can't get into, if she can't, she can try again. But if she can't get into vet in New Zealand, she does an animal science degree, and she can go and get automatic entry into vet in Australia.
Wow, there you go.
So because the prerequisite in Australia is that you have a pre-degree, and they're treated as domestic. So it's domestic fees, not international. And so it's sort of like, well, there you go.
It could be a better opopportunity. It might lead to something more.
So to me, what's my real wealth? I've learnt enough to teach my children that thinking and that mindset that's going to set them straight. And I'm also fortunate enough to have enough money to be able to pay all my daughter's rent, etc., while she's down there. So she's doing the same strategy as my son, in that all of her living allowance goes into her asset fund. Not a term investment, because interest is rubbish. Asset fund that's going to keep growing and growing. So she'll end up with a big debt, yes, but way more money to cover it.
So it's all of those lessons, and that's the most crucial stuff. Now, we have an opportunity for giving some of our listeners that lesson as well.
Okay.
So you've been very kind in bringing along 3 copies of these books as well. I'm gonna steal a copy for myself and read it, and then we're going to give away. So obviously I can pass the education and any learnings on to all of our clients going forward, and I want to learn it myself. And then we've got a couple more books as well that we're going to give away, so that you can get some of Nicole's knowledge, and obviously we'll link her website as well, The Property Lifestyle, so you can read some more there, all about Nicole, her journey, her story, and how she helps people invest, which you can find a lot about in No Money Deals, and also understand the whole philosophy around property quadrants, which I think is really useful if you're looking to create a long-term wealth strategy. So thank you so much for your time, Nicole. I appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. And one other thing for your listeners too is I'm always happy to talk to people. So awesome. I've got, I think on my website there's a Calendly link. They can just book a phone call with me. Amazing. No charge. I don't charge people. They actually talk to me. And we talk property. I'm not into trying to sell you anything. Yes, I do mentoring. I don't make a huge amount of money from it. I make money from property. But I'm always happy to answer any questions and talk property, so feel free to talk to me.
Awesome, amazing. Well, we'll link Nicole's website and you can book in there if you want to have a discussion from there. And yeah, thank you so much for your time, Nicole. Appreciate it. And look forward to talking more soon.
Cool, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Beautiful.